This Guy's Garage. Like and subscribe.
L'honorable chef de l'opposition.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Long, miserable years. This Prime Minister is not worth the cost. He massively increased the money supply by $600 billion, inflating housing costs by over 100%. That forced one C-SPAN shipyard worker I met last week to buy a normal house for over $1 million. And now interest rates have gone up because of inflationary deficits, something the Prime Minister promised would not happen, and he's forced to pay $7,500 a month on his mortgage while supporting his 3 kids. Will the Prime Minister reverse his inflationary spending so that this gentleman and his wife and 3 kids can afford to keep their home?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
One thing is clear, the cuts, the austerity that are proposed by the Leader of the official opposition would not help that family, would not help Canadians from coast to coast be able to afford a new home. That is or the homes they're living in even. That is why we're continuing to work right across the country to bring forward ambitious and community-specific solutions to the housing problems they're facing. We've signed Housing Accelerator Fund agreements with London, with Vaughan, with Halifax, with Hamilton, with the province of Quebec, with more to come, Mr. Speaker. The cuts he's proposing won't help Canadians. Our investments, done responsibly, will continue to help Canadians.
That's right. Hear, hear. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Middle-class shipyard worker paying $7,500 a month on his mortgage is living austerity now. Yes. The Prime Minister is talking about is abundance for government and austerity for working-class people who must carry him and his overpriced bureaucracy around on their backs. Mr. Speaker, this gentleman has 3 kids to raise in their adolescence, paying for their sports while keeping a roof overhead. How does he expect them to pay $7,500 a month to fund his overpriced interest rates that result from his deficits?
Le très honorable Premier Ministre.
Mr. Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition is proposing to cut spending. Well, the reality is we have the lowest deficit in the G7. We have the best debt to GDP ratio in the G7. And we've preserved our AAA credit rating, Mr. Speaker. We are fiscally responsible as we support people with things like the grocery rebate, with investments that are bringing down inflation, working with the different grocery companies. But the reality is Canadians have a right to know which programs he'd be cutting. Would he be cutting child care for families? Would he be cutting dental care for kids? Would he be cutting pensions for seniors? Because, Mr. Speaker, he has campaigned against all 3 of those measures for Canadians.
That's right. Hear, hear.
Before the Honourable Leader of the Opposition asks his questions, I'm going to ask members please to restrict your comments to the time that you are recognized by the Chair to have the floor. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, after 8 years, this Prime Minister is just not worth the cost. And what would I cut? I'd start with the $54 million ArriveCan app that is now under police investigation. And then I'd get rid of the $35 billion infrastructure bank that pays bonuses but hasn't completed a single infrastructure project, Mr. Speaker. And why don't we throw in the $100 million plus contracts to McKinsey, a company that helped cause the opioid crisis. But speaking of all the waste that he forces on Canadian taxpayers, when it comes to the ArriveCan app, which is now under police investigation, he covered up a previous bad behavior under SNC-Lavalin. Will he at least cooperate with the RCMP investigation into the ArriveCan app?
Le très honorable Premier Ministre.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Once again, we see the Conservatives are all about cuts, not about investing and building a stronger future. The reality is I recommend, Mr. Speaker, that the Leader of the Opposition take a ride on the great REM in Montreal that the Canadian Infrastructure Bank helped build, which has helped thousands of Canadians see being part of the future in a responsible way. We're going to continue to build a stronger future for Canadians by making the right investments, by keeping fiscally responsible, by staying away from the kinds of cuts that the Conservatives continue to put forward.